Now let's look at some of the ways where we can start to bring in multiple layers into our images and start building these layered documents. How Photoshop really takes care of a lot of this for us, but also how we can start to add layers. I am inside a bridge here, and I'm just going to open up lesson 2A and 2B. So I've just selected both of them, just hit enter or return. And what I'd like to do here is I'd like to get lesson 2B into lesson 2A. And I did this inside of lesson 1, but I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can get the same task accomplished, and it really just comes down to whichever one you like the best. But I'm using this tabbed interface here, so don't forget, if you start to see floating windows like you see here, you can just click on the title bar and you can drag it upward, because I think the tabbed interface is a lot better when it comes to seeing multiple documents that are open. Now what I want to do first is I need to select this, and I've got a really bad example, but think of having two word processing documents open. If you wanted to copy text from one into another, what would you have to do? You'd have to select that text first, then copy it, and then paste it into the other document. Same thing here. I'll go down to select all, puts a selection around there. I'll go down to edit copy, and this is the last time I'm going to do that. I'm going to assume that everybody knows that Command or Control C is the keyboard shortcut for it, and then I'll click on the other image. Notice in my layers palette I've only got one layer. I'll click inside there, and I'll go down to edit paste, and again, this is the last time I'll do that. I'll assume that everyone knows that Command or Control V is the shortcut. And now look what happened here. We got another layer inside of the layers palette, of which I can take and I can do whatever I want to. I can move it around. I can erase from this image. I can take a paintbrush and I can do crazy things and paint on this image, which I really don't want to do. I can turn this image into a black and white. Remember, we did that in the last lesson. And go take a look over at lesson 2B again. Notice nothing's happened to it. All right, because these are two separate documents. They're in no way connected to each other. And that's important to remember here, is that the layer that I have in the layers palette from this document is no way connected to the layer that I have in the layers palette in this document. And in fact, you can only see one layers palette at a time, because you can only have one image selected to be active at a time here, which right now it's lesson 2A. If I click on 2B, my layers palette changes because there's only one layer there. Okay? Now let's go ahead and do this a different way. I'm going to deselect, and instead of using the selection method here, I'm going to take my move tool and I'm going to click on the image. I'm going to click and drag, and before I let go of my mouse button, I'm going to drag it over lesson 2A, and I'm going to move my cursor over the image here, and you'll see it drops another layer into the layers palette. So I've got a whole new layer here. So now I've got 3 layers, and they're starting to build on top of each other. All I see is this top one. We're going to talk about stacking order in a couple of lessons here, but right now all I see is this top one. And again, just like before, I can erase on it, I can do whatever I want, and notice it's not affecting the original image. Okay? So now let's take it a step further again, and I'm going to drag both of these layers into the trash can icon at the very bottom, and that's going to delete those layers. So just click and drag into the trash can. All right, now I've got my original image back. Let's go back over to lesson 2. One of the other ways that I can get this image in here is to make a selection myself. Remember how I selected all before? And that selected the entire image. But let's say I only want part of the image to come over. Well, I just make a selection of it. Okay? Just make a selection with any of your selection tools, and then copy, go over here, paste it in. Again, Photoshop creates a blank layer for you, and it puts that image right into that new layer. And that's really what you want it to do. I'll actually have people say, is there any way to paste it directly into the original? You don't really want that. You want the benefit of layers here. Again, I can take this, use my move tool, and move it wherever I want. So that's how you can create a layer when you've already got images to work with. Just by dragging one or copying one into another one automatically lets Photoshop create a layer. However, if you wanted to create your own layers, then try this. What I'm going to do here is a little keyboard shortcut. If you hold down Command on the Mac or Control on the PC, you can click on this layers thumbnail inside the layers palette. Just click on it. All right, so Command or Control click, and it puts a selection around that layer. What I like to do is put kind of a little white border around this, but I don't want to do it on the original layer, and you'll see why in a second. So I'm going to create a brand new layer to do this. I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layers palette, just click on the new layer icon. All right, it's the second one over from the right next to the trash can, and that creates a blank layer in the layers palette. So instead of copying and pasting images in here, I just created a brand new blank layer. And then I'll go up to the edit menu, go down to stroke, and inside here I'll type in 15 pixels. I'll change the color over to white, and then I'll use the location set to inside and hit OK. And you see what happened here? Once I deselect, we've got a white border around our image. But what's neat about this is it's on a layer of its own. All right, it's a little bit hard to see, but if I took my move tool, see how I can move it around? Because it is now separate from the layer that's below it. The photo is still down here, and I can move that around too. These are all individual layers, and that's where you get the benefit of working with layers, because if I ever wanted to take this top layer here, remember this is the one with that white frame, if I ever wanted to change the color of the frame, I could just select it. Remember what we did before, how we can put a selection around it? I could go up here to the image menu, I could go down to adjustment, and I could maybe go to levels. Inside levels, I could make this darker or brighter. Okay, you could see I can do all different things to it just by using some of the adjustments, and I'm not affecting any other part of the image. What's really nice about this is if I decide I don't want this stroke, I can just click on the layer and drag it into the trash can. And now I don't even have it here anymore. Okay, so that's kind of takes you into a little bit of how you can start to add layers on your own, how you can start to build these multi-layer documents. If you've already got the images, then just moving them into the same document will start to build the layers for you, or you can always add your own layer by just clicking on that new layer icon and then doing whatever you want to on that layer itself. It'll be separate from the rest of the image.